In my 40-plus years practicing as an architect, I've witnessed huge changes in how we design and build our homes. Materials and building technology have advanced and evolved dramatically in this time, which has completely changed the possibilities of what a home can be.
As an architect, my interest has always been in ecologically sustainable housing that would last indefinitely. There's an expectation today that houses should be grand and individually expressive, with a focus on space and light.
That's important, but in my opinion, almost all houses built until now are not fit for the 21st century. We need to start paying attention to how our homes are built, not just the aesthetics or the amount of space and light we create, but the performance of the building materials we use in the construction and the energy the house will consume in its lifetime to keep us warm, healthy and draft-free into the future.
In this episode, I'll be looking at new developments in Ireland's construction industry and also discovering how we can adapt our existing housing stock to save on energy costs.
Today, we have 2 million homes in Ireland. A quarter were built during the boom years. From my perspective, almost all of our homes have been built to poor energy standards. Data from the EPA shows that household energy use in Ireland is the second highest in Europe. This isn't just a problem for our heating bills. It also contributes to the excessive amount of imported fuels burnt in Irish homes, which contributes to poor air quality and a major source of Ireland's greenhouse gas emissions. Ireland has a target to reduce our fossil fuel consumption to almost zero in the next 30 years, and our buildings are at the heart of this challenge. Now that Ireland is back building again, I'm interested in finding out what standard of homes we're building today. Madeira Oaks in Enniscorthy is Ireland's first ever housing development of affordable super efficient homes. These houses are built to the Passive House standard, which are certified to extremely high levels of insulation and air tightness. The Passive House standard is one type of construction that typically achieves an A or better on the Building Energy Rating scale.
I'm really interested in finding out what it takes to reach this standard of construction.
So, Michael, you're building passive houses here. How many?
We're building 12 passive houses here. We have 4 already built and occupied, and we're building 8 here. As you see, we have 2 of the 8 started, and we're putting up the timber frame today for the other 2, the next pair.
Typically, a development like this 15 years ago would have had a BER standard of a D1 rating. This means the average home would have cost about €2,200 a year to heat, or $22,000 spent over the last 10 years. Today, the minimum standard for new builds is an A3, which costs about €600 a year to heat. This A1 development is in a different league again. But is it more expensive to construct this way?
You hear a lot of arguments, that passive house is more expensive than standard construction. Well, in this project, we've basically burst that bubble.
We're selling these houses for 190,000 each.
Are you telling me that you can build passive houses for that sort of money?
That's what the customer pays. It includes VAT, it includes landscaping, roadworks, everything, all in.
So how did they achieve this exemplary standard of efficiency?
You have a lot of insulation in the walls, about 9 inches of insulation in the walls, and in the roof there's even more. The roof is about this thickness of insulation.
Right.
So we've got a really heavily insulated floor.
How much?
The U value of this floor is it's less than 0.1 watts per metre. So
really good.
Yeah, it's about that thickness of insulation, dense foam insulation.
30 centimetres.
Yeah. One of the special things about Passive House is the air tightness as well. So it's completely sealed up. So these buildings are 20 times more airtight than your normal new build construction.
20 times?
20 times more airtight. Drafts are a thing of the past. Just can't happen because they're so well sealed up. And one of the ways we can achieve that is with fairly new products on the market. This is a new air tightness board, for example, this green board that we see behind us here. It's the world's first certified air tightness board made in Ireland by Quilcha. It stops any cold air infiltration, stops any drafts, and it actually, this is the party wall between the two neighbours, and it cuts down any sound, so you can't hear your neighbour plugging in the toaster or whatever.
With this exceptional level of air tightness, there's a requirement for mechanical ventilation. In this case, the heat recovery ventilation system replaces the need for a heating system.
There's no boiler, there's no underfloor heating, no radiators, so all of that's eradicated. There's absolutely not even a stove in this house. So the whole thing is dependent on mechanical ventilation and heat recovery. What we've got here is a 180-litre cylinder. There is a counterflow heat recovery system. It takes the exhaust air from the building, contains it. It actually can then go and produce all your hot water to 180 litres to 55 degrees. So what we take out, we use, and then we replace it with fresh, warm air for wintertime or in the summertime, cool air.
Is it easy for the householder to manage this and to maintain it and to control it?
Well, in actual fact, very little, because there's only one controller in the house. They can see straight away the temperature of the hot water and the ventilation rate. And anything in terms of filters or alarms will indicate here on the system, so they have everything they need to know just at a glance. So there's no going around twisting knobs, setting oil boilers or leaking, trying to vent radiators or anything else. It's just here.
This mechanical heat recovery ventilation system is complemented by the use of solar PV panels, which generate electricity during the day. This means that all space heating and hot water can be reduced to only €200 per year.
There's no oil, no coal. You have no heating bill. Your electricity bill will be for your white goods, you know, your washing machines, your cookers, your lights, that type of thing. So the people coming into them, all they have to do with these houses is live in them.
So what's it like to live in this unique passive house environment? I'm curious to meet some of the new homeowners.
I had been living in a house here in town for the last 25 years. It was an old house. It had a very low building energy rating.
What was
only
it?
E2.
E2.
E2,
Oh God.
yeah. So I was faced with the prospect of either having to upgrade that house or maybe see what else was on offer in the area. Now, I didn't know a huge amount about passive houses. And so I read up as much as I could about them, and the more I read, the more the idea appealed to me.
And how long are you living here?
I'm living here 6 months now. I moved in last April, so it's really only the last couple of weeks that it's gotten cold here, but the temperatures in the house are still very comfortable.
While Monica made the move to avoid the cost of upgrading an older house, her neighbour Dorothy chose her passive house for health reasons.
What was your last house like?
It was only 10 years old. I had a big garden, but I just found that I couldn't do it any longer, so I moved in here.
So much more manageable.
It's far more manageable for me, yeah.
Yeah.
My health has improved since I came in here.
It has?
Yes,
And you're
yes.
sure of that, yeah?
Oh, I'm positive of that. I know when the sun's shining, I do all the washing and tumble drying.
Right, so when the solar is working well,
I work with the solar.
right, you work with the solar. That's a great idea. What this development proves is that larger housing schemes that are designed and built to certified passive house standards can be very cost effective. And some county councils in Ireland are recognising this.
If we can get value for money and at the same time we can lower fuel bills for the tenant and for all of our buildings, I think it makes economic sense as well as sustainable sense.
Going forward, I'm not going to build anything on the passive houses. It is actually as cheap or cheaper to build passive houses, provided you do them right.
We're coming out of a recession now where we haven't had a lot of construction, and now we're starting to ramp up again. And I think this project here, you know, puts down a serious marker. You know, if we want to create the next generation of houses, this is really where we should be going.
It's great to see contractors now building very low energy houses in Ireland. But what's the solution to our existing 2 million cold and drafty homes? To get an idea of the nature of the challenge, I spoke to building energy expert Michael Hanratty.
We carried out a study on the whole stock of the north side of the city. There's 130,000 apartments and houses on the north side of the city, 300,000 people living there. So what we did was we used a variety of different data sources to establish exactly how energy efficient is the housing stock today. And the average building energy rating of the housing stock in that area is a D2, which would be very similar to the national average.
So what's the typical mix now of different house types in Dublin and across Ireland?
Well, Duncan, in the north side, we again very representative of the rest of the country. So, from the city centre, we have local authority housing blocks, which would have actually been built, some of them originally in the 1930s, and then all the way through, particularly to the 1980s. In the inner city, you would have had quite a lot of apartment buildings, starting in the 1980s, 1990s, and then of course you have the red bricks in the inner city, right back from the Georgian times.
So all of these different house types are going to need different ways to retrofit.
If we're being serious about the residential housing sector playing its part in meeting our climate protection targets, then we have to scale up the level of retrofit and find financing solutions. But it's very doable.
Lower income households are particularly exposed to the health risks of living in damp, cold conditions. Too often, they're unable to meet the higher costs of adequately heating their homes. Across the country, many charities are responding to this challenge and have collectively provided essential upgrades to over 120,000 vulnerable households.
Hi, David.
I'm here in Crumlin to visit Nolene Keegan, whose house is being retrofitted by Energy Action Ireland.
Years ago when we moved in, we had no heating, we just had coal fires. And then eventually we got the central heating.
And do you live alone here?
No, I live with my daughter, Zoe. She's 25. My daughter suffers with her lungs and her heart, and she was getting chest infections on a regular basis. It would affect her health as well as mine. I have arthritis, so the cold would affect me. In the summer it's fine, there's no problems in the summer. But it's just the winter, it's so cold. And the heating is on from the time I get up till the time I go to bed. If you switch the heating off, the house would go cold instantly.
Okay.
So, for
Very
health
poorly.
reasons,
There was no insulation.
there was no insulation.
Insulation was never heard of when this house was built, so it's losing a massive amount of heat, mostly to the walls and roof, which means the energy bills are very high.
I do get a household allowance.
Fuel allowance.
A fuel allowance. So
That helps.
Yeah, that helps. You get that every month. You just have to do it. If the bill comes in, you pay the bill, and you have to have the heating.
Today what we're doing for Nolene is we're installing attic insulation. There was only 50mm existing there, so we're bringing it up to 300mm. We're installing some roof ventilation as well as part of this. We're insulating the walls for her as well. She has an 80mm empty cavity there, which we're filling up. We're installing wall ventilation as well, and we're installing some mechanical extract ventilation as well, one in the bathroom and one in the kitchen.
Lucky she's a cavity, double leaf wall here.
Yeah, she's very lucky, especially in this part of Dublin, which most of the houses here would be solid concrete. So she's very lucky that she can have this done.
At least you can do that.
We can do something for the wall. Otherwise, you'd be looking at externally insulating the house, which is a lot higher cost, as you know.
Absolutely, a lot more work, but it's very good to do it.
While working with limited resources, charities like Energy Action try to meet the basic needs of as many households as possible. They're bringing this house up to a D from an F rating. It's not the perfect solution, but Nolene and her daughter will see significant savings and improved living standards into the future.
Are you looking forward to now the results of this work?
I'm hoping now that the house is done, that it will be more comfortable.
And people like Nolene now, when you do work for them, how do they feel about it afterwards?
The feedback we get from people when we call back out either to do an inspection on the house after the work has been done is great. We do get a great response from homeowners from after the work that we've carried out.
There are over 300,000 households in Ireland defined as in fuel poverty. Many are living in homes impossible for them to heat, which has a devastating impact on the occupant's health. But with a problem of this scale, I feel that there could be more that could be done. Simon McGuinness is one of Ireland's foremost expert architects specialising in low-energy design and technology. He believes that this situation is so critical that it demands an urgent response. But in doing so, it offers many opportunities.
There are 10,000 families in these apartments. It represents 50% of the social housing stock of the city. People in these small ground floor apartments are spending a fortune on trying to keep warm. The concrete is completely uninsulated. The floors will sweat with condensation. We have the best external air quality in Europe, and we have some of the highest rates of bronchial disease, of pneumonias, of all of that kind of stuff, which is all a symptom of poor indoor air quality. So our buildings are killing us. We can actually set up an industry in Ireland to retrofit these. And let's start with this one, because we've got 10,000 identical units to do. And the money is there now. The European Union has announced 23 billion in funding for exactly this kind of projects. And we've just got to get on with the task. And there's a big education issue required, because the people that are going to be doing this work just don't have the skills yet.
For the Irish building sector to respond to the challenge of upgrading our homes, we need to get the finance models right. But we also need to develop the skills to do it. Ecological Building Systems in Atboy is one of the few material suppliers offering skills training for building professionals.
In Ireland, we have over 1.5 million buildings that require serious energy retrofits, 300,000 of which are solid stone walls, which have barely any insulation. So the existing buildings present huge challenges technically to reach a low energy standard. So the training is crucial to ensure architects can design buildings with the appropriate materials, and then the builders can execute and install materials correctly. Very important that we upskill as soon as possible so that we avoid having to retrofit our retrofits a decade down the line.
There are 2,500 architects in the country that need to take this training. There are about 10,000 engineers that need to take this training. There's no way short of it. If they're doing this kind of work, they need a new skill set. Otherwise, they will make mistakes. They will make buildings unhealthy.
There are clearly significant employment opportunities in this area, but we have to get it right. So what does it take to retrofit a home for the 21st century? I'm off to see a deep energy retrofit of an existing house, where the homeowner went the extra mile to get the best standard possible.
So obviously the energy performance of this is extremely good.
It is. It went from a BER G to an A3.
A G rating?
Yeah.
And I mean, presumably it was like this house here,
It was exactly like that house.
Yeah.
So you can see the amount of insulation on the front there. We put external wall insulation, 150 mil there. And the only place you see it really is at that step between the neighbour and our project.
Yeah.
One of the requirements would be a continuity of insulation. So it's important to get insulation from the bottom to the top and then across the roof. But our main aim at the front of the house was to make sure, even though we were doing quite a lot to the house, that it would tie in with the neighbourhood.
Okay.
And you'd barely notice.
Pauline bought this house 30 years ago, but lived and worked in Africa for a long period, and only returned to Ireland 10 years ago.
Having lived in Tanzania and Ethiopia, I saw the impact of climate change at first hand, and I felt that it was important to be able to contribute in my own small way by trying to have a house which was as sustainable as possible, but which would also be bright and modern and comfortable. Heating the house was quite expensive. There was a problem of damp, and a house could be quite cold at times.
And probably drafty too.
A bit,
yeah.
A bit.
So all of these windows and doors are all to Passive House standard, are they?
Yes, they're Irish made, triple glazed, certified Passive House, and very airtight, very highly insulating.
So have you solar collectors also, Joseph?
Yes, we do. We've about 3 square metres at the back of the house, facing south-west.
So this is thermal solar for hot water, basically?
For hot water, exactly. And we've a super insulated, possibly even more important than the solar panels, to be honest, is that we have a very high performance cylinder. So any amount of heat that goes in there from either a gas boiler, any heat source, but including the solar, is stored very, very well for a very long time.
So Pauline, did you get any grants for any of this work?
But I did get some grants from the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland for the external installation and for the new gas boiler.
Over here we've got our combi condensing boiler. We've got the cylinder, which is highly insulated, and it has 2 coils, one for the solar and one for taking heat from the gas boiler. That's then connected back to everything else through extremely well insulated pipes.
Pauline, I notice your gas bill here. It's very small. Most of the cost is standing charge.
Yes, that's right. For 6 months of the year, I don't need to use the gas boiler at all, so just have to pay the standing charge. So the net result is that for the last 12 months, my total gas bill was just €300.
Pauline's oil-fired heating system was costing her €1,500 per year, and this still didn't provide sufficient heat for a healthy home.
How do you deal with ventilation? Because you've got basically a very airtight house.
What they call natural ventilation does not work in houses like this. You have to move to a managed ventilation strategy. That's the only way to deliver that high-quality, clean air. What you see here is we've got the supply point on this side taking in cold but oxygen-rich air from outside, and it comes in and it moves into the main unit. And then at this point up here, we're actually letting the air out of the house, which is now depleted in oxygen. And between these two, in this space down here, we're recovering the heat.
Would you recommend this, all of what you've done, to other people?
I mean, I know that obviously not everybody is in a position to undertake a really substantial, deep renovation. But I think there is a scale of things that can be done, and they do make a major contribution to energy effectiveness.
Joseph, with so many houses now needing to be deeply retrofit, what are the challenges for all of those householders out there today?
Homeowners are only going to do this if they want to do it, if they feel it's right. And I think the message that they need to hear is that this is worthwhile, it's financially sound, that it is comfortable, that it is a healthier environment to be in, and it gives them less exposure to future economic shocks.
You did a big job here. How do you feel about it?
I'm really happy here. It's a very bright, very comfortable, very warm house, and I find it an ideal place to live.
Pauline's home is the standard of retrofit that we need to achieve to really make our houses sustainable. Already in Ireland, SEAI have part-funded over 300,000 upgrades to various levels. But there's still a huge challenge to increase the overall standard of upgrades to make our housing stock fit for the 21st century. I asked Jim Gannon how we're going to achieve this.
We face 2 challenges. One is in relation to new homes being built. I think the move towards near zero energy buildings will really help on that front. It will improve the new building stock. But the real challenge is in deeper retrofit of the existing housing stock. What I think we need to do is to, again, arm the citizen with more supports if they are required to bring them to deeper retrofit. Because as we look to 2020 in particular, we need higher impact interventions in each house, and particularly as we move to 2030, our engagement per home needs to achieve more on an individual basis.
Low energy new builds and retrofits to our existing buildings make sense for our health, for our comfort, but also because we'll be reducing the carbon emissions of our homes forever.
We want to be cosy, to be comfortable and to be healthy. And sadly, most of our building stock, people don't have that.
Once the energy upgrades are done, then everybody has lower heating bills, lower CO2 emissions, much more comfortable houses, much more healthy houses.
I think environmentally we have a responsibility to look after our country and our planet. I think we need to do that for ourselves, for our society.
If we love this planet, if we love our children, this is this kind of engagement is very, very necessary.
Deep retrofitting almost our entire housing stock is one of the biggest economic, social and environmental challenges we've ever faced.
But it also can prove to be Ireland's greatest opportunity.
A special documentary featuring members of the deaf community here in Ireland airs this Thursday night at 10:15. It will be subtitled, and a version with ISL translation will run simultaneously on RTE Player. Next tonight, EastEnders.